So I had two near-death experiences, one in 1992 and one in 1994. And the two experiences are quite different. And the first one happened after my third child was born. And the birth of this child was quite traumatic because I was in labor and contracting about 3 minutes apart, and we had a 7.4 earthquake strike. And at that moment, I thought I was going to die because all the windows were shaking and all the instruments on the trays were jumping up and down. And eventually, my labor stopped after that earthquake, because when you're in that much of a panic, you're running from the tiger in the jungle, and that's what it feels like. And your labor will actually stop so that you can get to safety. And after about half an hour, my labor started again, and my baby was born. And then we had a 7.2 earthquake, and then I hemorrhaged the first time. And there was this mountain of blood clots that came out. And I was kept an extra day in the hospital to make sure the bleeding would stop. And we had lost all the power in the hospital. And then about 10 days later, my friends were having a baby shower for me. I had two boys that were 6 and 3.5, and now I had given birth to a little girl. And as I went to the park to this baby shower, a blood clot the size of a baby's head came out. And I told my friends I have to go right away because something is really wrong. I went to the ER and they did an examination. And I was, they kept me for about 2 hours, and then they sent me on my way. And they said, well, it could have been a second lining that came out. And then again, the next day, I went to the bathroom and another blood clot the size of a baby's head came out. And we called the hospital and asked, what should we do? Because they hadn't done anything when I was there the day before. And as my husband is on the phone, my bleeding stops, and it was decided that I should see a doctor in Huntington Beach, California, where we lived at the time, the next morning. So at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, I saw the doctor, and again, they did a visual examination. They couldn't find anything wrong, and there was no lab work done. There was no ultrasound, no check for any kind of infection, and I was sent on my way. And then that evening, another blood clot, the same size of a baby's head, comes out. And at this point, we didn't know what to do. So we said, okay, let's go back to the emergency room. And we went back again. They did a visual examination, and they said, well, it could have been, a second lining coming out. And they kept me for observation. They closed the door. I was lying there by myself. I didn't have a bell to ring. I had no way of calling for help. And eventually I started bleeding again. And I'm lying on this table thinking, wow, this is great. I'm finally bleeding. They're finally going to figure out something is wrong with me. And it just happened that a nurse came in. She opened the door to check on me. And she opened that door and her jaw just dropped. And you could see the fear on her face. And I was lying on this table, and all the paper underneath me was just covered in blood. It was like I was lying in a pool of my own blood. And I could hear the call on the loudspeakers. And it was stat, OBGYN, stat to the ER. And within a minute, somebody, an older physician came running in with a younger physician behind him. And again, they did a physical examination. And as they were doing this physical examination, another large blood clot the size of a baby's head comes out. So now this is the 5th large blood clot in 3 days. And at that point, I tried to sit up and tell the doctor, I don't feel too good. And of course, he knew right away what was going on and how much blood I must have lost. And so he pushed me down on the bed in the ER, and the room filled with hospital staff. And as I lied on this bed, they started tipping it backwards. So my head kept going down towards the floor, and my feet were going up towards the ceiling. And I had a nurse on either side of me, and the nurse on my right was quoting my blood pressure, and the nurse on my left was trying to place an IV. But it's really hard to place IVs because once you get to this state and you're going into shock, your veins are already collapsing and it's really hard to get a needle in. And I'm lying there thinking, what is taking her so long? And as I'm lying there, I can hear the nurse on my right, and she's quoting my blood pressure, and she yells out, 50/15, hurry. And at that point, I mean, once it's 60 over, or lower than 60/20, it's not really supporting a heartbeat anymore. And they kept tipping my bed. And at this point, it's just like I'm falling. It is as if you jumped out of an airplane and you're just free falling down to earth without a parachute. And it's shortly after that she says 50/15, hurry, that I know that I'm dying. And I'm telling you this because that is a very different experience than the experience I had during my birth of my child when I thought I was going to die in that earthquake. And you kind of have your life flash in front of your face. You know, people, those of you that have been close to a bad accident, a car accident or anything, that feeling of, oh my gosh, you know, I could die. But this was very different. I knew that I was dying. And it was shortly after this that I just have, I feel like I'm hanging off a cliff with just my nails. And at any second, I'm just going to plunge to my death. But I have no beliefs in the afterlife. I don't believe in God at this time. Even though I was raised Lutheran and confirmed at the age of 14, I didn't really believe in anything. So here I am, lying on the table, and I can feel that my soul is trying to leave my body, and I'm holding on to the soul for my life. And so what do? The atheist that I am, I pray to God to save my life. So here I am pleading, saying, please let me live. I have 3 children under the age of 6. Please let me live. They need a mother. And it was shortly after that my soul was just sucked out of my body. And it was as if 1 second, it happened so quickly that you don't even know how you got outside your body. And I've had people ask me, where did your soul leave? Was it from the crown of your head or your chest? And honestly, I have no idea, because 1 split second I'm inside my body and the next split second I'm outside my body. And I found myself floating above my body, a couple of feet outside my body. But there was this knowledge of this unconditional peace and love and tranquility on the other side. And I also had a knowing that I had access to all information, past, present, and future, and that there was no time on the other side. But I also had a feeling of being attached to my body. And I've heard people talk about the silver cord and things like that, but it was an attachment and some form of energetic attachment. I personally don't remember seeing a silver cord or seeing a string. It was just a knowledge of that my soul that was outside the body belonged to my body down there on the table. But that knowledge of just being part of everything that is on the other side and having complete consciousness on the other side, it was this feeling of this is not supposed to be this way. This is not supposed to happen, because I didn't believe that things like this could happen. And it was shortly after that I was just sucked back into my body. And the best way I can describe it is like a giant vacuum hose, because again, it happens so fast. 1 second I'm outside and the next second I'm back inside my body. And of course, they kept me in the hospital, an extra day, and because I was at this point so sick. And that next day, when I was lying in the hospital room, hooked up to all these different monitors, my sister-in-law, who had recently passed away about a week earlier, was in my room, and I had an awareness of her being in the left corner of my ceiling, and I could hear her, and she said, "You will be okay." And I was still struggling with the experience I had from the day before, and now I could also hear my sister-in-law, and I honestly thought that it must be a hallucination. I must be, going crazy, and I better not tell anybody. They're going to lock me up. They're never going to send me home. They're going to think I'm crazy. And I was afraid of what had happened, and thinking that maybe I was actually going crazy. And hearing the spirit world like that and knowing it was my sister-in-law also sort of scared me at the same time as it was comforting to know that she was saying I was going to be okay. It was also scary for me because I didn't believe that something like this could happen. So what happened after this was I didn't receive a blood transfusion. They kept me extra day in the hospital to measure my blood because I was young and healthy in my early 30s. And I was making blood quickly. And I asked the doctor, because right away they told me I had to get a blood transfusion. But this is 1992, and people were getting AIDS, finding out they had AIDS a few years later when they had received blood transfusion. So I pleaded with the doctor, and I said, if there's any way you can avoid it, I'd rather not take blood because I don't want to find out I have AIDS. With 3 children, and I just can't do that. But if you have to give me blood, then just give me blood. We'll take the chance. And they kept measuring my blood, and they said, well, you're making blood quickly. So you're not going to feel too good for a couple of months, but you're making blood quickly. We're going to give you all these different supplements and medicines and different things to make sure the bleeding and everything was stopping. And it took me a long time. So by Christmas time, I was getting sick, and I couldn't even go to the grocery store for 6 months. It took me, my baby was born in June, and it was December by the time I made it to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk, just to prove that I could do it, because I was so weak, and it took so long to heal. And I got pneumonia, and I went to a walk-in clinic to give me antibiotics. And then I got even sicker. Even though I was on the antibiotics, I went back to the walk-in clinic, and they said, you were really sick. You have to go to the emergency room. And they took my blood, and they came back in the room, and they said, do you have leukemia or AIDS? Because you have no immune system at all. And I told them what had happened. And again, I pleaded with them. I said, I'm not going to go to the emergency room because we didn't have insurance this entire year because my husband's company was bought and everybody was laid off. And even though he was in a regional position, he was looking for a job that was going to pay the same amount of money. He was now the sole breadwinner. Now he had 3 children and a sick wife to support. And so he kept trying to get, he was offered new jobs about every 3 months just when we were going to get insurance. So that whole year, I didn't have insurance. And I kept getting, I finally healed from pneumonia. Then I got sicker. And then by May, now my youngest is 11 months. So I get pneumonia again, and I have covered in bruises, and I had this huge bruise that spanned my entire hip area. And again, the doctor wants to send me to the ER. And I said, I can't because we get insurance in July. And if I go now, obviously something is very wrong, but I'm going to have a pre-existing condition, and I'm never going to get insurance. So we managed to, with more medications and inhalers and antibiotics and who knows what, steroids, I managed to heal. And it took me, we later figured out that what I had was a bone marrow suppression. So you're not making enough white blood cells for your immune system. I was anemic. I didn't have enough red blood cells. And my platelet count was really low because I kept getting bruises. And so I was really sick for 5 years, and I actually had a stool in the kitchen in order to be able to cook dinner for my children because I couldn't stand up long enough because I would get so faint. And my soul was constantly trying to leave my body. I was just so faint and so weak. And this was a part of my existence. And if I put my knee on the floor to help my children tie their shoes, I would get a bruise on my knee from just having it touch the floor. So you can imagine how sick I was. And many times at night, I would have to take my head off the pillow because I would be so faint, and that feeling my soul is going to leave my body again would happen, and I would have to hold on to my soul. And so now 2 years later, in 1994, as I'm living through this and trying to heal, I again leave my body. And this just happened in the middle of the night. So I wake up because I'm so faint. And this is just something I was just so used to. It was my existence. And I take my head off the pillow and I hold on to my soul and, try to keep my blood pressure high enough to not let my soul leave. But this night there was nothing I could do. And within a split second, my soul is pulled out of my body. But this experience is very different from my first experience. And my soul gets pulled out, but it is as if I'm just tumbling through darkness. Imagine just tumbling through space in darkness. But then I get to a place, and I call this place the mid-station because I was aware that there was levels above me and levels below me. So imagine you go into, a tall building, like a skyscraper that has 100 floors, and you push the button to get off on floor 50, halfway up the tower. That was the feeling. It was that knowledge that there was something above me and something below me. So I call it the mid-station because I felt like I was halfway up. And as I arrived at this mid-station, of course, without my body, it's just my soul again. But the soul, it is as if you have a body because I'm able to turn my soul, but it's just my soul. But when I arrive, I hear the most beautiful music. And I can't figure out where this music is coming from. So I look and to the right, I see this log cabin. And I just think it's just funny what we all see. But I see a log cabin. And I'm thinking, the music must be coming from the log cabin. So I open the door and look inside. But it's empty. And I'm really perplexed because I'm wondering where it's coming from. So I turn around to my left and I see another log cabin. It looks exactly like the one on my right. It's just a mirror image. And I open the door on that cabin, but it's empty. There's nothing in it. But as I'm perplexed about wondering where the music is coming from, I become aware of a very bright white light that is behind me, that is just sort of growing in intensity. And as I turn around and stand in this light, and this light it is just pure, unconditional love. It is the whitest, brightest light that you could ever imagine. And it just extends into infinity. And it's like I'm part of the light. I am in the light. I'm enveloped by the light. But it's a knowing that I am with Source or God or whatever it is that you want to call this higher spirit that is our guidance or source. But there is knowledge that I come from this light. I'm part of this light. I return to this light. I carry this light within me. And in this light, there is an outline of angels. And the music is coming from the angels from the light. And I'm completely aware and I'm questioning why I'm seeing angels, why I'm thinking I'm with Source or God, because I'm still trying to put my first near-death experience into perspective. And I don't even believe in angels. And why am I seeing angels? And this music, it's the most beautiful music you could ever imagine. And you can't even create the sound with musical instruments on earth. But as I'm in this light, I become aware of two spirit guides. I call them spirit guides because it's the best definition I have of them. And the two spirit guides are communicating with each other telepathically, but I can hear them. And the first the one spirit guide to my right says to the spirit guide diagonally to the left in front of me, what is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back. And I say, no, wait a second. How can this be? How can I be outside my body and still be me? And the spirit guide in front of me said, if I told you, you wouldn't remember. So somehow and I've heard other people talk about this too, is they have some way of controlling how and what you remember. But then he said, you will remember this. And at this point, it is as if a movie screen appears in front of me. And it is as if I'm standing on the moon, looking down on the earth. But around the earth is a silvery, glittery fishnet, which I now know we call the grid. But this is in 1994, so we didn't even have the internet back then. I had no knowledge of what this could be or could be called. And to me, it looked like a silvery, glittery fishnet because I grew up in Northern Europe, in Sweden. And during the summers, I lived on an island with no electricity, water. And I would row the boat for my grandmother early in the morning to lay the nets and in the ocean to catch fish for the family. And when she lifted the nets out of the ocean early in the morning and the sun shone on the nets, it would have that silvery, glittery sparkle to them. So to me, it looked like a silvery, glittery fishnet that surrounded the earth. And the spirit guide said, everything on earth is connected to each other. And everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And with that message, I got sent back to earth. And that message is really what transformed my soul on a soul level. And it is what I'm living by still today and still teach people and how we can access this. And so what happened after these near-death experiences, I had a lot of electrical interference. My watches would stop and televisions would turn on. And you can read about all of these different experiences in my book. But it took me a very long time to really understand that there is something greater than just me being on earth. And even though I was raised Lutheran and confirmed at age 14, I didn't really believe in any of it. And over a period of 12 years, I became more and more clairsentient, clairaudient, and clairvoyant. And I started hearing the spirit world and seeing things and knowing that relatives were getting sick, and I would call them and warn them. I was warned about accidents. All these different things started to happen. So after 12 years of listening to the spirit world and understanding that the messages and the messages that I was receiving were correct, I was guided. And one day, that spirit came in I was in my living room and told me that I had to be a naturopathic doctor. I had to integrate East and West, or old and new, and I would bring messages and healing to the people. And I was to write 2 books, no wait, 3. And at that time, because this is back in 2004, I said, what do you mean bringing messages to the people? What do you mean writing a book? And the only thing that the spirit world kept telling me was, when the time is right, we're going to tell you the first thing you have to do is go to medical school. And I enrolled in the prereqs for medical school within 2 weeks. And I went to medical school at the age of 54, and that was in 2012. And I attended a naturopathic medical school. It's a 5-year program that I did in 4 years, and graduated in 2016. And as soon as I graduated, the spirit world again told me that now it's time to write your book. And it's time for you to study mediumship, and was guided to attend Arthur Findlay College in England to develop my mediumship skills. And I then published my book, which is called Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul. And my book just won a gold medal in the spiritual leadership category, and from the Living Now Book Awards. And this award recognizes truly world-changing books that contribute to positive global change. So I'm really excited about that because I wrote that book to help other people transform their life and know that it's never too late to make a change in your life and to develop your own spirituality and intuition by sharing my own journey and how it happened for me with many different stories in the book, as well as short messages at the end of each chapter that will help you integrate what it is that I'm trying to teach you into your daily life so that you can also become more intuitive and live your life to your fullest potential. So I also work now as a physician. So I have a website that is called drlotte.com. And I have another website that is called Divine Spiritual Essence, where I work with people spiritually. I offer sessions as a medical intuitive or a medium and psychic. So I can help people heal on an emotional and spiritual level, because many times we can't heal somebody just by Western medicine, and we need to have a more integrative approach to creating healing for people so that they can truly heal. And I would say my message to everyone that are listening in today is that we are all connected. We are all one. It is all divine, and so are you.